Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Library of Congress Literacy Awards webinar. I'm Kalina Black, and we're really glad that you're joining us today for the fourth and final part of our Literacy Awards Successful Practices webinar series. Today's topic is on culturally relevant literacy approaches. Thank you so much for being here. Just some housekeeping items before we get started. We can just go to the next slide. Just to let you know that we are recording this program and we will serve the recording as soon as we're able to do so. As this event will be recorded, any questions or other participant contributions may be made publicly available as part of the library's archives. We're so glad that you're here, as I said, and you'll have the opportunity to talk to each other and our panelists via the chat. So just to get started with that, we would love if you could share your first name and where you're joining us from in the chat. It'd be helpful to know who's in the room with us and where you're coming from. Great. So wonderful to see. I see Virginia, Maryland, Los Angeles, New Jersey. Great, we're so glad that you're here with us today. So if you can go to the next slide, Kathy. So just a little bit of background about the Literacy Awards. Some of you may already know quite a bit about this program, but the Literacy Awards was originated by David M. Rubenstein in 2013, and it honors organizations that are working to promote and expand literacy and reading in the United States and worldwide. And the awards recognize groups that are doing exemplary, innovative, and replicable work. And they emphasize and spotlight the need for the global community to come together in striving for universal literacy. So this slide just shows a screen cap of a video about this year's winners and honorees. And then the next slide is just gives you a glimpse into our website that gives a little bit more information about the 2021 winners. And my colleagues will be putting some links into the chat about the program and some relevant information that you might find interesting. So to learn more about the winners, please do feel free to take a look at some of these resources. So as I mentioned, for today's panel is on culturally relevant literacy approaches. And we're so glad that the conversation today will be facilitated by Dr. Gholdy Muhammad. She is a Library of Congress Literacy Awards Advisory Board member and also the author of Cultivating Genius, an equity framework for culturally and historically responsive literacy. And we're glad that she's joined by our panelists that represent several of this year's honorees, and those organizations include Friends of Tonga, Inc., Global Center for the Development of the Whole Child at University of Notre Dame, Funza Literacy Trust in South Africa, and Associates in Research and Education for Development. So you can go to the next slide, Kathy. So before I turn things over to our panelists to hear from them and also Dr. Muhammad, we first want to hear a little bit more from you. So we're asking if you could just complete this question stem in the chats with a word or a few words or a short phrase, just blank. That's why I think culturally relevant literacy is important. And if you can just make sure that when you're putting in the chat that you send to everyone, that way we can all read your thoughts. Everyone is valuable. That's why I think culturally relevant literacy is important. All students get the education they deserve, belonging, advocacy for self and community, relationships with the foundation, inclusion, equity, humanity. Great, these are great so far. Empowerment, accessibility, students seeing themselves, identity. Great, so building the beloved community, that's for everyone. So please feel free as you know, if something comes to you, not now, but in a few minutes or at some point during the seminar, please feel free to put that in the chat. But we hope that this will be a good way to sort of kickstart this conversation. And so with that, I am really thrilled to welcome and introduce the conversation and presentations from our panelists. So first, we'll hear from our panelists individually, and then I'll turn things over to Dr. Muhammad for the panel discussion. But first, we'll hear from Chiara Collette. She is the program manager at Friends of Tonga.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm so thrilled and honored to be here and to be a best practice honoree among such esteemed honorees. I've thoroughly enjoyed hearing about all the other nominees' work and am excited to share the stage to talk about what our organization is doing. As mentioned, my name is Chiara Collette, and I am the U.S. Program Manager for the nonprofit Friends of Tonga. Next slide, please. Friends of Tonga was founded in 2018 by returned Peace Corps volunteers in reaction to Cyclone Gita hitting Tonga, with few ways to be able to support from afar. Friends of Tonga is a volunteer-led nonprofit organization that seeks to connect all people with a vested interest in the welfare of the Tongan people and to partner with local Tongan organizations to support, enhance, and amplify educational initiatives and opportunities in the Kingdom of Tonga. We have found our footing in education and have a scholarship program that has sent 72 students to secondary school to date, a video read aloud program, and a pen pal program, which I'll be speaking in more detail to shortly. And we rebuilt the Ta'anga kindergarten that was destroyed by Cyclone Gita, currently the first and only cyclone and earthquake resistant early childhood education center in Tonga. You can see a picture of some of our students learning in that classroom on the slide. As many of you may have read, Tonga has also been thrown into the news lately with the Hunga Tonga Hunga Hapai volcanic eruption and resulting tsunami. Friends of Tonga has been able to mobilize support for organizations on the ground, providing relief services, including water, sanitation, food and hygiene services, and we're planning to support the Ministry of Education in their school rebuilding efforts. All of our programming is informed by Tongan leaders on the ground, not only in Tonga, but across the diaspora as well. This is a critical component to our literacy implementation. Next slide, please. Thank you. Our literacy efforts draw on our own experiences as teachers in Tonga, the experience of Tongan teachers, and the Ministry of Education. One challenge facing Tongan students is lack of access to materials, especially for English education. English is the official second language in Tonga, and knowledge of English is necessary for students to get into secondary school and succeed beyond that. These students need to be able to read and write and understand English, but have limited opportunities to do so, especially on outer islands. To address this challenge, Friends of Tonga created a video resource library with permission for children's authors, in which volunteers record themselves reading books, and the pages are shown for students to follow along. You can see an example of what one of those pages might look like on this slide. This creates a very small file size, allowing teachers, parents, and students to download stories easily and access these downloads without an internet connection, something that's crucial in an area where the internet is not always reliable. You may have heard in the news, if you're following along, the underwater cable that provides internet to Tonga was recently severed for 4 weeks after the volcano. This program allows us to expand our reach to all students across Tonga, regardless of location or access to internet, once the initial download is complete. Students are able to hear different dialects of English, see different people reading, and the read aloud format draws on the Tongan oral tradition of storytelling. Each book also has supporting resources for students to practice vocabulary, comprehension, and writing skills related to the text. Next slide, please. Our other literacy project is the Pen Pal program that connects students in Tonga with students overseas, including Australia and the United States. Students exchange up to 6 letters a year while engaging in meaningful writing practice. For Tongan students, they're writing in their second language, and all students get to learn about a culture other than their own. Friends of Tonga serves as the go-between, connecting classrooms and providing resources. All letters are shared digitally by taking pictures or scanning, making the program more sustainable than relying on mail service. Next slide. These programs have shown a great deal of impact, making them highly replicable. We have 85 books in our digital library currently, with a goal of 100 books by the end of the year, and eventually 1 book for every day of the Tongan school year. These books have been downloaded over 100 times, but as we mentioned, with these books being able to be shared offline, we know that this reach is even greater than that number. Our Pen Pal program has reached 14 individual classrooms, 10 schools, and 450 plus students. And from our participating schools, we've been able to see measurable results, averaging 9 to 10% increases in student test scores between 2019 and 2020. Next slide. Thank you so much for your time and your interest in Friends of Tonga. I look forward to continuing the discussion in the panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kiara, for that overview, and thank you so much for being here. Next, we will hear from Dr. Anastasia Libris-Osiris. She is the Senior Associate Director of Language and Literacy Education for Haiti at the Global Center for the Development of the Whole Child at the University of Notre Dame.
Hi, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anastasia Libris-Osiris, and I am the Senior Associate Director for Technical Lead for the Global Center's initiatives that focus on language literacy and social emotional development in Haiti. Next slide. With a 61% literacy rate in Haiti, political unrest, and a fragile economic state, we're here at the Global Center of the Development for the Whole Child, focused on 3 social constructs of importance in Haiti, which is l'école, l'église, la caille, translated to school, church, and home. These pillars cover our programs that target nutrition, literacy, SEL, access to resources, messaging, and mental health. Next slide. We serve students from pre-K to 3rd grade, parents, teachers, and community members. Our students are supported through a robust mother tongue curriculum in Haitian Creole and French, a contextually appropriate SEL morning meeting curriculum with engaging literacy activities, as well as a play-based and exploration ECD curriculum that shifts teaching from rote memorization to true student engagement. Our teachers are supported through coaching and teacher training, as well as interactive demonstrations and classroom visits to support our teachers within the classroom. We also have parent engagement activities that centers around parent workshops. During the workshop sessions, we provide children's books for our literate and illiterate parents, teach how to create play-based learning opportunities at home, childcare, and meals. We also support mother empowerment mental health groups and radio programming marketed for parents, preschoolers, and out-of-school students so we can bridge that literacy gap. Lastly, we engage the community by working with priests in our clusters of schools to develop sermons that focus on the first 1,000 days of a child's life, brain development, and child baptismal sessions that strengthens our parents' arsenal of strategies to connect with their children through early grade reading activities. Next slide. Next slide. So when thinking about our programs, we focus on a rapid learning in action model. We always conduct a needs assessment. Then we engage in program design that is inclusive of community members' inputs. Once that is developed, we test our implementation through piloting in several schools or communities based on our objective. Program monitoring is always our focus, as well as focus group facilitation throughout this process. Once we collect all the input from the focus groups, we make program adjustments. Then we do it all over again until we can take that intervention to scale. This is done for all of our programs. Next slide. All of our programs here, whether it's l'école, l'église, la caille, church, school, church, or home, And the main focus is to activate the L3 community ecosystem to help support our parents, our students, as well as other community members. Next slide. We service over 350 schools, over 5 departments in Haiti, and over 30,000 parents, teachers, and community members throughout the duration of our projects. If you want additional information, resources, or to explore some of our briefs, please visit us at gold.edu/globalchild. Thank you.
Thank you, Anastasia, for that overview. And also thank you, G, for being here. Next, we'll hear from Dorothy Dyer. She is the program manager for Funza Literacy Trust.
Right. Hello, everyone. So I'm from Funza, which is in South Africa. We were established in 2011, and we were recognized for our successful practice of continuing to expand our services using technology. So we use cell phone technology to do our literacy work. Go into the next slide. So just the one before. Our mission. So Funza's mission is to improve the literacy levels of South Africa's youth by encouraging reading for pleasure, writing for meaning, and learning for life. Through our work, we aim to grow generations of educated, empowered, and engaged young leaders and citizens in South Africa. So we aimed at teens and young adults, which is quite unusual for a literacy organization to focus solely on that age group. And we also see literacy as much broader than just kind of getting by an academic success, but it's a matter of empowerment, of agency, of identity too. So that is our focus in our work. You can go to the next slide. So why we do what we do. South Africa, as you may know, is one of the most unequal countries in the world. For young adults, our unemployment rate is over 50%, and I think that's a conservative estimate. And our school students attend under-resourced and overcrowded schools. Books are expensive, libraries under-resourced, and reading is seen as an alien chore. It's done at school, and the sooner it's left behind, the better. So there is not a strong reading culture. Communities are book poor, but many do have access to cell phones, interestingly enough. And I think we know at this particular forum, literacy can change lives. So the next slide is what we do. So we have a library on a cell phone, and it's our Mobi site. It's also available on a computer. And every week we have a brand new, exciting local story written by local writers. And so we've had a story every week for years. And what's been really exciting is at the beginning, it was written by older professional writers. We have now mentored young writers to become our professional writers who now write the local stories that we have. And we are very strict on quality. It's got to, for people who are not hooked on reading, we need to really make sure that the stories are exciting, that they're almost like a soapy or a series, but on a phone with cliffhangers to get people hooked, and where people can see their own lives, their own worlds, and their issues, to see that reading can be meaningful and can be enriching to their lives. We also have blogs about topical issues, all sorts of identity issues, social issues, written by young writers as well. And then what was quite exciting is we started off as focusing very much on reading. But as our young readers started seeing themselves in stories and reading our material, they wanted to write too. And we started getting in work from our young readers who wanted us to publish their work. And so we extended our platform to become a writing platform for our readers as well. It's our fan section, where readers can publish their own work and then get comments from other readers. And we've also got a review function where we can send back the work with some comments, or we can do a little edit and then publish it. So that's really exciting. And that's just been a very new project that we've just launched onto our site. So we've got our professional writers and we've got our fans writers who send in their work and become part of this community of writers. We also have free courses. Readers can do free courses based on Funza's material. And we are zero rated by all the networks here, so people can access us. In South Africa, data is extremely expensive comparatively. And so this was also a game changer for us, is that we are free. So people can read local, exciting, relevant stories that are hot off the press, and it's free. You can go to the next slide. So about 15,000 readers spend about 10 minutes on our site every day. So we have a growing readership, and over 14,000 pieces of readers' work have been published. And in our surveys, we do annual surveys. Over 80% of readers report that their reading has improved. They enjoy reading more and are reading more frequently. And I think about 50 to 60 say that they didn't enjoy reading before, but they do enjoy reading now, which was also extremely heartening. And then we get many comments, and here are just two to give you the taste of them. Every story I read on funza.mobi has a lesson, and how to get past, I didn't edit these, all this troubles teenagers go through. They make me aware. Funza.mobi is my best friend. She gets me and understands me. I was interested that we're a she in that comment. Yes, and then another one. Every day I'm looking forward to your courses because I have nothing to do. So I'm not depressed anymore because there's so much to learn. And we get thousands and thousands of these comments on our courses and on our surveys, testifying to the impact that we are having on young people's lives. And I think that's it. Yeah. Thank you. We also, well, with all these thank yous, we publish mainly in English. Our school system at high school, learners are learning in English, but we also publish in the other South African languages as well, not as much as in English, but we really do think it's an important part of literacy and of people's identity. So here are a few. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dorothy. Thank you for being here and for that overview of your work. And finally, I'd like to invite the Associates in Research and Education for Development. This presentation will be given by Penelope Bender. She is an advisor to ARID, and she'll be presenting on behalf of the director of ARID, Mamadou Lee, who is also here with us today.
Hello to everyone, and thank you so much. On behalf of the entire ARID team and network, we would like to thank the Library of Congress for this award. I'd also like to congratulate all of our fellow honorees. It's been so wonderful to hear about everyone's work and to know that there's a whole group of people out there in the world doing similar things, especially in these days of COVID when we've been so confined. It's been wonderful. So I am here to give this presentation for ARID on behalf of the director, since the presentation is in English. And this, I will go ahead and get started. ARID is an NGO that is based in Senegal, in Dakar. And at this point, ARID has 30 years of experience in literacy programs and African language publishing for children, youth, and adults in Senegal and across the Sahel. ARID has developed materials in many languages of the Sahel, and many times materials that were not available before in these languages. Next slide. So this is the ARID team. And again, ARID focuses on using languages that learners know. For those of you who are not familiar with the West African context, the former French colonies of West Africa and Central Africa still tend to use French as an official language and the language of schooling. And that makes it very difficult for children, families to access education and to participate in the formal economy. So we know that starting education in the language that children know makes it easier for them to acquire a second language later on. So ARID focuses on first teaching literacy in languages that children know and adults know, and then later works on bilingual education. So training, publishing, instruction, and action research are all important activities in ARID's work. Next slide. So beneficiaries are in Senegal and then across the Sahel. ARED works through a large network of community organizations and government institutions to develop community-led programs in a variety of countries and languages. I would say that the most important development recently in ARED's work has been early childhood literacy, with a focus on using science-based, evidence-based approaches to reading. So that work has grown from very small programs that were based mainly in Senegal to other countries in the region. Next slide. So ARED works on several different programs. Probably their most important program now is called Bilingualism in Real Time. So there's been a lot of debate about the best way to teach children who need to learn in 2 languages in primary school, often for political reasons, sometimes for economic reasons, but in primary school, primarily for political reasons. So ARED made a strategic decision to introduce French at the same time as beginning instruction in children's home languages. So literacy instruction starts in the home language, oral language development is done in French, and the 2 come together so that children learn to read and write in both languages by the end of primary school. So to go along with this, ARED has developed a large number of materials, textbooks, teacher's guides, supplementary storybooks in many Senegalese languages for use in the formal education system. So this is a large-scale public education program, as well as the community activities that ARED does more with adolescents and adults. So there's this large-scale implementation now in 3 Senegalese languages and French. It's expanding to 6 Senegalese languages, and the Ministry of Education has decided to take it to scale to all schools in Senegal. So ARED continues to work with other countries and programs in the region, and most recently that has been working on a program that integrates literacy instruction and nutrition for communities in Mauritania, which is Senegal's neighbor to the north. Next slide. So in terms of outcomes and impact, I think the biggest impact that ARED has had has been in the publishing world over the last 30 years. You can see on the slide pictures of many of the resources that ARED has developed, and I can't emphasize enough how innovative this has been. I had never seen a veterinary dictionary in Pular, for example. Pular is a language that is spoken across West and Central Africa by millions of herders, people who raise livestock. And ARED produced a veterinary dictionary for these herders, in their own language. So that has been significant. They've printed and distributed hundreds of thousands of these materials. So over the last few years, there's really been a focus on this bilingual program for the early grades. And we've seen that bilingual classes have improved learning outcomes by a very significant amount. This data is back from 2018. It takes a little while for the exam data to come out, but you can see that the pass rate went from 43% of students who were only taught in French to almost 65% for students who were taught in their home language and French. And this exam is given in French. So this just shows once again that children who start in their home language are more easily able to acquire a second language than students who start in that second language. So Senegal, as I said, is now rolling out that program in all schools in 6 Senegalese languages and French. And of course, because Senegal is seen as a leader in the region, we're seeing a lot of follow-on impact from that in the neighboring countries who have been using French and are now working more on bilingual education. So thank you, and I'd be glad to, with Mamadou, answer any questions that you might have during the discussion.
Thank you, Penelope. Nothing to add. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Penelope, and thank you, Mamadou. We're so glad that you are both here with us, and thank you to all of the presenters for sharing a bit more about your organizations and the wonderful work that you do. We're looking forward to the discussion. And so with that, I'm really happy to pass things over to our moderator, Dr. Gholdy Muhammad, for our panel discussion. Gholdy?
Thank you. Thank you so much. This was such a beautiful display of genius, of excellence. I want to extend my welcome to the panelists and to the guests. And thank you, presenters, for sharing such incredible work from your organizations around the world. I will move to ask you some specific questions around culturally relevant literacy. And I invite you to respond if you feel so moved, but also engage in some warm and spirited conversation among each other, because I think there are so many just incredible connections between your organization's work. And I also invite our guests to add to the chat any joyful, honest, and loving reactions into the chat as the guests, as our panelists are discussing. So in my own work, I talk about 5 specific areas of culturally responsive literacy. And those are identity, skills, intellectualism, criticality, and joy. I want to start with joy because I heard joy being threaded and I felt joy being threaded throughout your work. Joy is something that is rarely taught, assessed, centered when education is at the forefront. Yet we know the purpose of education is indeed joy. I feel like joy is necessary. It invites children into beauty, aesthetics, and fulfillment in teaching and learning. So I would first like to invite the panelists to respond to the question of please share any of your work and how it offers joy to the world, and what joyful inspirations keep you doing this necessary work for children and for our families. And whoever like to start first can begin.
Okay, I'm happy to start with Funza. I think that's lovely, and I think for us, it's our readers are going through a really hard time. Like young adults in South Africa, there's poverty, there's unemployment, there's tough times. And I think, and yet people find meaning and find hope in their everyday lives, and they've got their friendships and their relationships. And I think stories and reading can offer hope. And I think, and prospect of change, even if it's not all joy all the time. And I think that we get a strong feeling from many of our readers that what stories can offer, and possibly this is more negative than just, this is not joy, but can offer alternatives, can offer things can be different. I can be different. Life can be different. And that's a very powerful belief. And we see that with many of our readers, that is what they identify as the impact of reading stories about people like themselves, about the world that they engage with, and that can be transformative. And yes, and joy can be related to justice and agency. And I think that's a very powerful part of literacy, of this other kind of literacy that we wanted to focus on. And I think what brings joy to me as working at Funza is seeing the kind of responses from young people, seeing the impact that the stories and that writing and expressing themselves, and the humor that the story that our young writers express as well in these difficult times. That is the most exciting thing for us, is to see the impact that we are having through the comments of our readers, and the fact that they are finding hope in quite difficult times.
Thank you. Others?
I can go. Well, for us, working in Haiti, it's similar context to South Africa, low literacy rate, political unrest, crime, poverty. And I think what really brings joy to our work and to myself when I'm creating some of the materials is we have it's called Sec Matinee, which is a morning meeting. And it allows our students to come together in the morning and focus on a socio-emotional overarching theme. And the kids have the opportunity at that time to kind of talk about what's happening at home or what's happening around them, and kind of share their thoughts. And they're supported by not only the teacher, but also their classmates. And from the beginning of the program to now, it's just the way the students communicate in the classroom, the way they communicate, support each other in the classroom, how they interact with their parents at home. You can totally see a difference, but just based on their interaction. The program has books that we also created that talked about some of the main issues that children face from their perspective. We have two characters named Anne and Tiga, and there's political unrest. Their parents are looking for work, and it just gives the kids a perspective that, I'm reading this book and I could connect to the book, and I have the opportunity to share my feelings about what's happening in the world around me with my fellow students and teachers and things like that. So I think that alone brings me joy when I see videos, or I go to the schools and I see the kids are just engaged in that morning meeting, which before definitely would not have happened. So that definitely brings myself joy, and it's great to see the kids' interaction.
I'll jump in. So Mamadou and I talked a bit about these questions before the panel, and so I'm going to look at one of the responses that he sent, and then I'm going to talk just a little bit about my experience as well. So Mamadou wrote about the parents and the way in which this work allows parents and children to connect. It's hard to overemphasize how schooling has been used as an instrument of separation in some of the former colonial countries in Africa. So schooling has always been in a foreign language. It's had a curriculum that parents couldn't understand, and it was really designed to teach children French and to have them leave their communities and go to the city, enter the formal economy, and leave. So these programs in languages that families understand allow parents for the first time to participate in their children's education and to communicate with their children's teachers and to really feel, this has impact on people's self-esteem and how they feel about their own identity and how they feel about their own culture. So for the first time, parents and families are seeing that culture valued at school. So what Mamadou wrote exactly is that when my children read in the national languages, I listen and I understand, I can help them, I can explain, I can support them, and I can reinforce what the teacher is teaching. And the children are being reinforced in their own language and their own culture. So seeing that, after seeing so many classrooms in French and so many classrooms where children were learning nothing, seeing that kind of bringing people together and reinforcing people's identity has kept me working in bilingual education for so long, and is a really important part of the work that RED has done. For me, children come to school full of knowledge, full of language, full of excitement. And when they enter their classroom and they're greeted in a language they don't understand, and they don't understand their instruction, and they cannot connect with their teacher, it's a completely different educational climate from when they're greeted in their language, in their culture, with a teacher who knows them, and they're able to learn. They're able to learn, they're able to discover the joy of reading and the joy of discovery, new knowledge, and then they learn new languages as well if they need to. So that brings me joy, and that's kept us going all this time. I have a colleague in Mali who works on bilingual. He says, sometimes we're on the crest of the wave, sometimes we're in the trough, but we keep rolling in regardless of all the opposition that we face. Thank you.
I can go next. I think one of the challenges we have with our programming is just that we are here in the States, we're not in Tonga. And so we don't often get to see the impacts that these programs are making or what's happening in the classroom. But in 2018, my husband and the co-founder, Funza Tonga, we were able to go back to Tonga and be in one of the classrooms to give them their pen pal letters from the United States. And seeing the joy on those students' faces of the excitement of, especially for a country where they don't really think that much of the world knows about where Tonga is or knows who they are or what's happening, that there's these students from America who are writing to their Tongan friend and want to hear about their lives and their culture. And I think that's really an important component outside of simply the literacy part of it and the meaningful writing practice. It's really allowing these students to feel seen in both ways and to be able to share the Tongan culture, which is not very well known, with the rest of the world in a small way.
Yes, thank you for that. You know, it is an audience. Please feel free to join the chat on joy inside the chat. Why is joy so important of education? It feels like it's our beginning, middle, and end for our children, our teachers, our families. That's what I kept hearing throughout you all's responses. Let's shift to the centering of and the roots of culturally relevant literacy, which was really developed by studying Black historical education. And so to our panelists, how does your work relate to Black historical excellence and the centering of Black and Brown, the brilliance of Black and Brown children, helping to disrupt any kind of deficit, false, or incomplete narratives of their lives? We know that people don't always start their stories off with genius, but with failure or struggle or deficit things. So how does your work relate to Black historical excellence and this recentering of Black genius and Brown genius?
I can start with what Mamadou shared in writing about this question. So he wrote about how their work in national languages in Senegal was strongly influenced by the fight for identity of Black Mauritanians. I don't know if many of you are aware, but Mauritania has a mixed population, as do many countries in the Upper Sahel, of Black Africans and Africans of Arab descent. So their work was strongly influenced by this conflict and this idea that Arabic was the language of Islam and the culture of Islam, and that Black Africans did not have a place with their languages and their culture. So he writes that the conflicts between Senegal and Mauritania ended up with many people moving from Mauritania, many Black Africans moving towards Senegal, and that really strengthened the work that they were doing on African languages, Black African languages on both sides of the border. Mamadou, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Non, c'est ça, c'est cette influence de la Mauritanie avec ce racisme entre les Maures blancs et les Maures noirs, et avec cette lutte identitaire qui a eu beaucoup d'influence vraiment au Sénégal sur le développement des langues nationales. C'est bon.
Okay, so he's saying that it was this racist conflict between what he's calling Black Moors and white Moors that led to this push for the Black Mauritanian identity.
I can go. I think for us, what I was talking about is not even just excellent, but just for young people to see themselves in a book was powerful enough, not as characters, as people who were the story. And that already shifted their own feeling of, it shifts you. If you recognize yourself in a book, you're seen, you heard, you're not alone. And then what we also do is we have series on Inspiring Tomorrow. We had a series on all sorts of focus particularly on South Africans, but on people who are doing quite extraordinary things, ordinary-ish people who are doing extraordinary things. So, and kind of role models who'd overcome obstacles and it could have been a skateboarder. We had skateboarder, doctor, artists, teachers, people who studied later in life to become teachers. And a lot of the responses again show the inspiration that when young people are reading about other Black people who have had similar obstacles and challenges and have overcome them and have succeeded and thrived, it's inspiring too. And we also have series. We have our initial focus was on fiction, but we also have blog series where we look at historical incidents and we look at historical events in Southern African history, slavery, the history of Africa. Well, that's about it, but very broad, but little to see parts of the history, little stories from the history of Africa to challenge the curriculum of what learners are learning at school. At the moment, we're just featuring, we've got these fantastic books that have just been published on women who shaped the world, about Black African women. And so we're focusing on that as one of our blog posts as well, because that is our world. I mean, for our young readers, we are focusing on African heroes, African role models that they themselves can aspire to.
I can add to that, just echoing what was said before with representation. But in Haiti, Haiti was the world's first Black republic and the first independent Caribbean state to throw out the French colony in 1804. But when you go to Haiti, you're unable to find, it's very difficult to find books that had characters that look like the children in Haiti because of the language focus on French instead of the mother tongue Haitian Creole, and a lot of colonialism and in the books and in the classrooms focused on French. So I think our main goal was to provide books in Haitian Creole, as well as characters in the books that look like our children, that dealt with the same situations as our children and conquered those issues in whatever way. So we found that the children enjoyed reading in Haitian Creole. They enjoy seeing characters that they can connect with and be able to find inspiration from some of the victories that the characters are able to overcome in our books. So it's basically almost the same thing here in Haiti as well. But in our program, we make sure that our materials are in Haitian Creole, our mother tongue, and also there's a lot of representation, whether it's women that are doing amazing things in our books, children in wheelchairs, children that are darker complexion that are just as successful as others. We make that our priority in the resources and the materials that we provide in the classroom.
To jump in, I think for Friends of Tonga, everything we do is ground truth and focus from a Tongan culture perspective. We're very intentional at what programming we include. We make sure it is run by Tongan teachers and the Ministry of Education, because obviously they know better what literacy is going to be effective in their country than we do. And so I think we really try to be able to take all these different perspectives and cultural aspects in mind in our programming. It's something we would like to grow further in our video resource library, with getting more South Pacific books and resources on there. But I think much of our programming is within partnership with Tongan organizations. We are a collaborative force. We're in partnership with Tonga, with Tongans, and with Tongan organizations, so that we're able to promote these opinions, the narrative that's coming out of Tonga, and be able to really share these experiences with the rest of the world. Like I think I've said this a lot, not a lot of people know about Tonga. And so I think really being able to share Tongan perspectives and just getting the word out there so people know about this small island nation that is really being impacted by climate change and really having a challenging time right now is important to us, and being able to share those perspectives.
Thank you. And I invite others and audience members to the chat to think about the importance of centering Black and Brown genius and joy as well. Why is that important when the world has not always centered our brilliance? Let's keep it going, you all. These are great discussions, great conversations. It's something that was said around, the centering and resistance of injustice and inequities. I want to ask you all a question around like resistance and progress and successes. Here in the States, there's this resistance against culturally responsive pedagogies, against anti-Black racism, against critical race theory and equity and justice in learning. So there's a feeling for many of us that there's still so much to do. Yet at the same time is a striving to sustain the progress that many of us have made around the teaching of Black excellence, the teaching of culturally responsive pedagogies, the teaching of justice and equity. So based on your work in education, nationally and globally, where would you say we've made incredible progress, and what are some areas that are still in need of improvement? And how does your very purposeful work respond to these areas of need? So as you're thinking about this, please share with us your successes and your challenges.
I can start. I think some of our success is seeing a shift in, the academic part of it. Students are excelling, their reading and fluency is increasing because of the program. And I think some of the buy-in, some of the issues we still have is getting parents to understand that, reading in your first language, the child is building off of, is receiving skills and background knowledge in order to build, in French and to learn French and to be fluent in French as well. Sometimes the parents are still hesitant about, our books or our materials in the classroom and things like that, because to them, they still feel that French is what their children need in order to succeed, and that Haitian Creole, their mother tongue, doesn't have value. So there's still that struggle that we have to go back and forth. Sometimes it's with the teachers, sometimes it's with the parents. But I think a lot of our programs and initiatives is trying to drive in some of the science behind language and language acquisition and showing in social emotional development, because they go hand in hand, academics, they go hand in hand, and SEL, and trying to teach them that, building these skills in their mother tongue, as well as supporting these students, will lead to success. So unfortunately, that's something we still have to deal with, but I think that's, I think the gains that we've achieved in that area now compared to 5-6 years ago is wonderful. And I think if we keep going in that direction, hopefully we can get more buy-in and more people to see the importance of mother tongue literacy.
I'll go ahead and jump in. I think that globally, we've made a ton of progress in developing thousands of new titles in hundreds of new languages and making them accessible through digital platforms. So that's something over the last decade that we've worked hard on, and we have really made a ton of progress. In Senegal, in particular, ARED has shown that improving instruction, improving student learning outcomes is really using national languages, using languages that students speak is a prerequisite for that. He's writing that there's still a lot of work left to do on the languages, on developing materials. Some languages still need to have their orthography stabilized. But when I think about, 15 years ago, Mamadou and I had a memorable evening cornering the Minister of Education, on a rooftop in the night to get permission to start the bilingual program, because we knew if we didn't talk to him that day, we couldn't do it. And then now we have this national bilingual policy in Senegal. So we really have made a lot of progress, but there's a ton of work to do. And just as we heard about Haiti, it's not a technical issue anymore. We've really refined our technical arguments. We've come up with a lot of technical solutions. It's a political argument. It's convincing parents and government officials that their languages and cultures have value and that they need to be used in education to support their children. So we're still fighting that fight. And any suggestions about advocacy or communications resources, that's what we need. It's a political problem and not a technical problem at this point. Thank you.
I'm happy. Chiara, you want to go?
You can go next. It's okay.
It's fascinating hearing about these other language issues because, South Africa faces a similar challenges. But we have come a long way in various aspects. We've definitely, I think, we have a different system. This is not our area. Our Funza focuses on high school and young adults, but for our younger children, they learn Indigenous, their home language, for 3 years, and then suddenly, miraculously, overnight, they know English, and in grade 4, every subject is in English. So there's a huge systemic problem there, and I think more and more the government is recognizing, and people are recognizing, the importance of developing Indigenous languages beyond grade 3, and also having a better kind of bilingual program. And that's also very interesting for us, and in that we wanting to promote Indigenous languages, and people are seeing the worth of it too. The challenge in Indigenous languages is that during apartheid times, Afrikaans, which is a official language here, had huge funding behind it for dictionaries, for literature development, and so it's a strong language, whereas the other 9 languages are not as there's kind of contestation around dialect, contestation around the correct forms of words. And so translation and publishing in those languages can be difficult. And there needs to be money and research pumped into those languages as there was in Afrikaans, because that is our challenge. Translations and the correct dialect and the debates around getting it all right are difficult. That is one of our challenges in the Indigenous languages. What's also great to see, though, over the last 10 or 11 years is that reading for pleasure is being increasingly recognized in South Africa as something that's important. And so we were quite a lone voice. We feel like we're now part of a chorus, whereas before it felt like something that was very much out of school and wasn't part of a school focus. The challenge linked to that, though, is although reading for pleasure is being more recognized as something important, is the content. There's the curriculum is quite narrow. It's balancing especially if we're wanting young people in schools to use us. There's the issues of, teen pregnancy is a big problem in South Africa, but how much can we talk about it? How far can we go in our stories that if we do want to be used in schools? So it's also balancing the kind of potential conservatism of the department, which we haven't actually come across that much, and also our young people's own lived experiences, the challenges, the huge social issues that they describe in their own lives. So those are some of the challenges and developments that we've had in South Africa and for Funza itself.
Speaking from a Tongan perspective, or at least the perspective in Tonga, I think one of the big challenges facing Tonga, or that they are focused on as the Ministry of Education, is a focus on early childhood education. And I think This is something that doesn't get enough attention in many places, including the States. And I think it also is something that we don't necessarily allocate the necessary resources towards. And Tonga has realized that this is a gap in their education and something that's needed. And I think a huge success is that it has become a formalized part of the education system in Tonga. And so as Friends of Tonga, we've been able to support these initiatives because although they would like to have an early childhood education center or a kindergarten, as they would call it, in each school, they don't necessarily have the infrastructure or the funds to be able to build those schools in each location. And so that was something that we were very excited to be able to partner with our partner organization, Schools for Children of the World, to be able to build the first early childhood education center that is cyclone and earthquake resistant, because Tonga is also facing, like the rest of the world, climate change that is going to impact those infrastructure projects, but hopefully we'll be able to provide these spaces to allow the foundation for early childhood education and in structures that are going to stay for a while. So that's something that we feel has been a big success for us, for the Ministry of Education as well, and something that we hope to continue growing in the future.
Wonderful. Wow, this has just been such great discussion and conversation around what we're doing, what's needed moving forward. And so we want to make sure we have enough time for some rich engagement with our audience. So I'll ask one more question, but it has two parts. I would love for you to briefly share some forward thinking and freedom dreaming ideas. In other words, what is next for you in your organization as we're still navigating a pandemic, social unrest, sometimes uneven times, and the need for culturally relevancy and joy? What is next for you? That's the first part. The second part to this question, can you leave us, the audience, and I know the audience are a part of organizations, universities, schools, communities, parents. Can you leave us with one takeaway, one strategy, resource, or support that we can consider to make sure that we are also successful with culturally relevant approaches? And I'll put this in the chat so we'll have this.
I can start. I think for resources, research, examples of our books, that it's all open access. You can pull any of that any of those resources and materials and download them and use them in your context if need be. But I think one of our main focus is to continue to build that ecosystem on those three pillars that I talked about in Haiti, l'école, l'église, l'accueil, building off of the church, the home, and the school, and making sure that we are able, as an organization, is able to provide the support that is needed based on the input from the community to help those areas. How do you say it in English? Thrive. Sorry, to make sure that those areas, areas thrive. So I think that's something that we continuously do. We try to be as innovative as possible. Try to create programs where if the parents come and volunteer, or if a child participates in a writing competition, they can get their tuition paid for. Or a teacher can get the support that they need in the classroom in terms of materials and things like that. We try to always thinking outside of the box and using our system to make sure that these programs are relevant, are focused on our context, and that it can be replicated. Even if one day we're no longer able to service Haiti, that Haiti can continue to thrive using our resources on their own. So it's a continual exploration of what we can do to help and to support those systems in Haiti.
So for RED in the future, there's a new large USAID funded program in Senegal that is going to do work in these additional languages and also do more work in early childhood. So RED will be one of the implementers working on that. Mamadou is writing that all day today he spent with the Ministry of Education, working on taking this program to scale, developing the plans and programming to take the program to scale. In addition, we're working on a COVID response program to catch children up. The pandemic closed schools in Senegal, as in almost every other country, and children have fallen quite far behind, even though their learning levels were really low to start with. So we're working on a tutoring program to pull children who are the farthest below the benchmarks for their grade and giving them more individual attention with that tutoring program. We're hoping to expand that to be a two-strand model to bring in some revenue for RED. As you all know, who run small organizations, funding is always problematic. And so that's a big question for how to spread the revolution, is how to find the revenue to do that, just getting down to the very practical level. In terms of resources, I posted some links to some of the global digital libraries that have the titles. I would encourage everyone to take a look at those. And Storyweaver and African Storybook both have software that's also open source to help people translate, adapt, and make their own books. So we created this when I was at USAID, and it's been a part of helping community members, people who have stories but aren't used to writing them, people who have stories and are used to writing them but aren't used to writing them in a digital format that will help them get published in today's publishing world, to get all of those stories down and to use them for children all over the world. So thank you.
Okay, I think for us, as I mentioned in our presentation, what we have just done, which has been really exciting, is to have a platform where young people can publish their own work almost immediately on our platform. Before, they used to email it, and it was quite time consuming for staff internally. So now so this is one of our new exciting things, which was a pie in the sky and is now a reality, is where young people can actually send in their work, and it gets, they kind of upload it themselves, and we just check it and moderate it and publish it. So that was something that we've just done, which is really exciting. And I think for us, our new director is very keen on looking at more at what technology can offer us. So audio clips, so that people can listen to stories as well as read them, that they can download stories, that the spoken word becomes part of what we offer. So different kinds of literacies, but on our Mobi site, and then beyond our Mobi site too, that as a youth, that we kind of are, that we literacy and reading and writing is something is very cool, very exciting and engaging, and not something that's just associated with school. And we want to be part of festivals and writing events to kind of spread the revolution, as my colleague was saying. And then I think I'm going to put down the website that was shared earlier from us, was funza.coza, which is the website that gives a background of our organization. But funza.mobi is our library on a cell phone, and that has tons of South African stories, mainly love, drama, crime, drugs, but they're dealing with issues that young people are facing, jealousy, heartbreak, that are universal. And so I'm sure you will find exciting stories from a different place, but that touch on things that everyone can relate to. So I'm going to put that in the chat, and do have a look at what funza.mobi can offer. I think we've read lots of American stories. Now you can read some South African ones.
Dorothy, I'm excited to look into that and see how it might help us with our video resource library and see what we can possibly collaborate on. I think for Friends of Tonga, Tonga is definitely in a crisis situation as we speak after the volcano and subsequent tsunami. There's still a lot of relief efforts that are going out, and life in Tonga is really just trying to get back to a state of relative normal as we try to have more access to food and water and crops and all of that. And with that, there's also the subsequent crisis of Tonga was one of the only countries that did not have any cases of COVID. Unfortunately, now with relief services coming to Tonga, they do. And so COVID is spreading through the islands. They are currently on lockdown. And so it will be also kind of a threefold support to Tonga in relief efforts for being able to provide food and water and those wash services, but also being able to support education in potentially our video library being shared with students so that they have resources while they're at home during lockdown, being able to support the Ministry of Education in whatever way we can in supplying those resources, and also supporting the Ministry of Education as they try to rebuild some of the schools that were destroyed by the tsunami. So there's definitely a lot going on there. And I will put the link in the chat to our Video Read Aloud library. And that's something that if anyone is interested, might be a replicable model for some of your organizations as well.
I will just pop back on just to thank everyone. Thank you, Gholdy. I don't know if you wanted to say one last word before we open it up to the audience.
No, I just want to say thank you for sharing, for doing the work. Sometimes this work isn't easy. It calls for a certain kind of heart, a certain kind of humanity, to keep waking up every day and striving for something bigger than us. And so I just want to say in gratitude to the presenters and the work that you all are doing through your various organizations. Thank you. It is this kind of work that gives me peace at night, knowing that we are striving every day to make the world better through literacy. So thank you. And now I'll pass it back over so we can have some time for some audience Q&A and discussion.
Thank you. Thank you again, Gholdy and Chiara, Mamadou, Dorothy, Penelope, and Anastasia for this really enlightening, multifaceted conversation. I definitely appreciated the sort of centering of joy, even as we were all talking about the challenges and difficulties of the work and the obstacles that you face. Just centering that reminder of why the work that you do matters and why it's important. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Similarly, panelists, if you have any questions for each other, you can feel free to put those in the chat as well. So far, I only saw one question from an audience member, in addition to many comments talking about, because expressing gratitude again for that centering of joy, talking about sort of the role that schools can play in I think someone said modeling joy, which was a really interesting way of putting it. But the only question that I saw for all of you is if there are resources that present positive cross-cultural families. The person meant parents from 2 different countries. So if you have any suggestions, you can go off mute or you can put those in the chat. But if anyone has any thoughts, feel free to share. And if not, I will also ask my colleague to put in the links to everyone's organizations so that if folks do have other questions or want to revisit some of the finer points of the presentations that you made or the work that your organizations do, they know how to get in touch and how to learn more. So I'm just trying to see if I see any other questions here. Well, if anything comes to you, do feel free to get in touch with us or with the organizations. And so with that, I just wanted to express gratitude again to our wonderful moderator and panelists for their enthusiastic participation and for all of the work that they do and the work that their organizations do. And thank you to our audience for your participation today and for all the contributions that you've made in the chat and the way that you contributed to our conversation. A couple of just links that we're going to put in the chat are just to learn more about the Literacy Awards program. We'll put a link to the website. And then we'll also put a link to where you can find the recording of this webinar and the 3 ones that preceded it. And again, on screen, you can see the links to the organizations that presented today. So with that, thank you again so much. We look forward to hopefully seeing you at a future webinar. This is the last webinar of this series, but we hope that you will revisit the ones that we've presented in the months before, and we hope to see you at a future program from the Library of Congress. And with that, have a great rest of the day.